Lyra had learned to become invisible long before she understood why she needed to be. She was born on a planet of crystal towers and endless gardens where her people lived in perfect harmony with beauty. They were tall and graceful, with smooth skin that glowed softly in shades of blue and silver. They moved like water and spoke like music. To them, physical perfection was not just valued. It was sacred. It was everything. But Lyra was not perfect. During her birth, something had gone wrong. The medical machines had failed at a critical moment, and a sharp piece of equipment had cut deep into her face. The wound healed, but the scar remained. It ran from her left temple down across her cheek, a jagged line of darker tissue that stood out against her pale blue skin like a crack in fine glass. Her mother had wept when she first saw it, not from joy at her daughter's survival, but from shame. Her father had refused to hold her. Within 3 days of her birth, her parents had given her away to the labor caste, the lowest level of society. They told everyone she had died. Lyra grew up in the care of machines and workers who barely looked at her. She learned to walk, to speak, to work, all without the love that other children received. She watched from the shadows as other young played together, their perfect faces glowing with happiness. No one invited her to join. No one spoke her name with kindness. By the time she was old enough to understand, she had already accepted the truth. She was broken. She was wrong. She was nothing. The years passed slowly. Lyra worked in factories and cleaning stations. She moved from one assignment to another, always keeping her head down, always wearing hoods and scarves to hide her face. The other workers ignored her when she was lucky. When she was not lucky, they whispered cruel words as she passed. They called her the marked one, the cursed one, the mistake that should have been erased. She learned not to cry. Tears changed nothing. She learned not to hope. Hope only made the pain worse. When she turned 20 cycles old, she was assigned to Galactic Commerce Station Theta 7, a massive trading hub that floated in the empty space between star systems. Ships from 100 different worlds docked there every day. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked its corridors, buying and selling and negotiating deals. Lyra thought that maybe, in a place with so many different species, she might finally blend in. She thought that maybe the aliens would not care about standards of beauty. She thought that maybe she could start again. She was wrong. The other species did not notice her scar. They had their own ideas about beauty and ugliness, and Lyra did not interest them enough to judge. But the on the station were the same as the everywhere. They saw her face and turned away. They assigned her to the lowest work in the darkest places. They made sure she knew, every single day, that she was still the marked one. Lyra worked in the lower cargo bays, deep in the belly of the station where the lights flickered, and the air smelled of metal and fuel. She loaded and unloaded crates for 12 hours at a time. She ate alone in corners where no one could see her. She slept in a tiny room with no windows, curled up on a hard bed, staring at the ceiling until exhaustion pulled her into dreamless sleep. She was 23 cycles old now. She had never been kissed. She had never been held. She had never heard anyone say that she was beautiful or special or loved. She had stopped believing that such things were possible for someone like her. The other workers in the cargo bay were mostly with a few aliens mixed in. They worked in teams, talking and laughing together during their shifts. Lyra worked alone. Her supervisor, a tall male named, made sure of that. He was cold and cruel, and he seemed to take pleasure in reminding her of her place. "The marked one does not speak unless spoken to," he would say. "The marked one does not eat with the clean workers. The marked one stays in the shadows where she belongs." Lyra obeyed. She always obeyed. What choice did she have? Sometimes, late at night, she would sneak up to the observation deck on the upper levels of the station. She would stand in the darkness and watch the stars through the massive windows. Ships would come and go, their lights blinking as they jumped to distant worlds. Lyra wondered what those worlds were like. She wondered if there was any place in the galaxy where someone like her could be happy. She never wondered for long. Such thoughts were dangerous. They made her want things she could never have. One night, as she stood watching a cargo ship depart for the human territories, she heard two workers talking nearby. They did not know she was there. "Did you hear?" one of them said. "A human ship is coming tomorrow, emergency repairs. They will be here for at least a week." "Humans," the other one said with disgust. "Such ugly creatures. No grace, no beauty, no culture. I do not understand how they became so powerful. They breed like insects and fight like animals. That is how." The two workers laughed and walked away. Lyra stayed by the window, thinking about what they had said. She had never met a human before. She had seen pictures of them in databases, and she knew they were one of the species to join the galactic community. They were soft and small compared to most aliens, with strange flat faces and skin in various shades of brown and pink. She did not think they looked ugly. She did not think they looked beautiful either. They just looked different. But she did not think much more about it. Humans were not her concern. Nothing was her concern except surviving another day. She went back to her room and lay down on her bed. Tomorrow would be the same as today, and the day after that would be the same as tomorrow. That was her life. That was all her life would ever be. Or so she thought. She could not know that the human ship approaching the station carried someone who would change everything. She could not know that in less than one day, she would meet a man who would look at her face and see something no one had ever seen before. She could not know that she was about to fall in love. But for now, she simply closed her eyes and let the darkness take her, dreaming of nothing, hopping for nothing, waiting for nothing. Just like always, the human ship arrived at Station Theta 7 just after the morning cycle began. Lyra was already in the cargo bay when the announcement came through the speakers. A vessel called the Wandering Star had suffered engine damage in a nearby asteroid field. They needed parts and repairs, and they would be staying at the station for approximately 8 standard days. The other workers groaned. Human ships meant human cargo, and human cargo was always disorganized. Their crates were heavy, their equipment was old, and they never labeled anything correctly. It would be extra work for everyone. Lyra said nothing. She simply pulled her hood lower over her face and continued moving crates from one platform to another. It did not matter to her what ship was docking. Her job was the same regardless. 2 hours later, the first human crew members entered the cargo bay. There were 5 of them, all wearing matching gray uniforms with patches on their shoulders. They were talking loudly among themselves, laughing at some joke Lyra could not understand. They seemed so casual, so relaxed, as if they had no worries at all. Lyra watched them from behind a stack of crates. She had never seen humans up close before. They were shorter than she expected, with round faces and small eyes. Their skin came in different colors, from light cream to deep brown. Their hair was strange too, growing only on their heads in various shades and styles. One of them caught her attention more than the others. He was a young male with brown hair that stuck up in messy directions. His skin was a warm tan color, and his eyes were a soft brown that reminded her of tree bark. He had a friendly face with a quick smile, and there was grease on his hands and streaks of dirt on his uniform. He was carrying a heavy tool bag over his shoulder, and he seemed to be the one giving directions to the others. He pointed at different areas of the cargo bay, explaining where things needed to go. Lyra looked away. It was not safe to stare. Someone might notice her. The morning passed quickly. The humans worked fast, unloading damaged equipment and broken machine parts from their ship. Lyra stayed in her section, loading crates onto transport platforms and keeping her distance from everyone. Then the accident happened. One of the human cargo containers was heavier than it looked. The loading machine was old and weak, and when Lyra tried to lift the container onto a platform, the machine sparked and died. The container tilted sharply, and Lyra stumbled backward, trying to keep it from falling. Her hood slipped off her head. For one terrible moment, she stood there with her face completely exposed. The scar was visible to everyone in the bay. The jagged line of darker tissue ran down her cheek like a lightning bolt frozen in time. The workers nearby turned away immediately. One of them made a sound of disgust. Another whispered something to his friend, and they both laughed quietly. Lyra felt her face burn with shame. She reached up to pull her hood back, but before she could, someone appeared beside her. It was the human with the messy brown hair. "Hey, that looks heavy," he said. "Let me help you with that." He grabbed the other side of the container and helped her lower it safely to the ground. Then he looked at the broken loading machine and shook his head. "This thing is ancient. No wonder it failed. You okay?" Lyra stared at him. He was looking directly at her face. His eyes moved over her scar without any reaction at all. No disgust, no pity, no fear. He looked at her the same way he would look at anyone else. She did not understand. "I am fine," she said quietly, her voice rough from disuse. "Good, that could have been a nasty accident." He smiled at her and held out his hand. "I'm Caleb Mason. I'm the engineer on the Wandering Star. You got a name, or should I just call you my new favorite?" Lyra looked at his hand. She knew that humans shook hands as a greeting, but no one had ever offered to touch her before, not willingly. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and took his hand. His skin was warm and rough with calluses. His grip was gentle but firm. "Lyra," she said, "my name is Lyra." "Lyra," he said her name like it was something pleasant, something worth remembering. "That's a beautiful name. Nice to meet you, Lyra." Beautiful. He had used that word while looking at her face, while looking at her scar. She pulled her hand back and quickly put her hood up again. Her heart was beating too fast. She did not know what to do with this feeling. "I should get back to work," she said. Sure, me too." Caleb picked up his tool bag and started to walk away. Then he stopped and turned back. "Hey, Lyra, if you need help with any more of these old machines, just let me know. I'm pretty good at fixing things." He gave her another smile, and then walked off to join his crew. Lyra stood there for a long moment, frozen in place. She did not understand what had just happened. She did not understand why he had helped her, or why he had introduced himself, or why he had not been repulsed by her face. Maybe he had not seen the scar clearly. Maybe the light had been bad. Maybe he would realize his mistake later and avoid her like everyone else. Yes, that had to be it. He simply had not noticed. She went back to work, trying to push the encounter out of her mind. But she could not stop thinking about the warmth of his hand, or the kindness in his eyes, or the way he had said her name. For the rest of the day, she caught herself looking for him. She saw him working on the other side of the cargo bay, crawling under machines and connecting wires. Once or twice, he looked up and waved at her. Just a simple wave like they were friends. No one had ever waved at her before. When her shift ended, Lyra walked back to her room in a daze. She sat on her bed and stared at the wall, trying to understand what was happening to her. A human had been kind to her. A stranger had looked at her face and smiled. Someone had touched her hand and said her name was beautiful. It meant nothing, she told herself. He was just being polite. Humans were strange creatures with strange customs. Tomorrow he would ignore her like everyone else. But even as she told herself this, a tiny spark of something warm flickered to life in her chest. It was small and fragile, barely there at all. It felt like hope. And that terrified her more than anything. 3 days passed, and Caleb Mason did not ignore Lyra. In fact, he seemed to go out of his way to find her. Every morning when she arrived at the cargo bay for her shift, he was already there, working on some broken machine or helping unload equipment. And every morning he would look up from whatever he was doing and smile at her. "Morning, Lyra," he would say as if they were old friends. At first she did not know how to respond. She would nod quickly and hurry to her section, her hood pulled low, her heart racing. But Caleb was persistent. He kept finding excuses to work near her area. He kept asking her questions about the station, about her job, about anything at all. "How long have you worked here?" he asked on the second day. "3 cycles," she answered quietly. "Cycles, that's like years, right? 3 years in this cargo bay. That's rough. Do you ever get to see the upper levels? The observation decks are pretty nice." She shook her head. Workers like her were not supposed to use the upper levels during busy hours. Caleb frowned at that, but he did not push the topic. On the third day, he brought her food. Lyra was sitting in her usual corner during the meal break, eating the plain nutrition bar that was given to all labor caste workers. It was tasteless and dry, but it kept her alive. She did not expect anything more. Then Caleb appeared beside her, carrying a metal container. "Hey," he said, sitting down next to her without asking permission. "I noticed you always eat alone over here. Mind if I join you?" Before she could answer, he opened the container and held it out to her. Inside was something she had never seen before. It was soft and thick, with layers of different colors and textures. "It's a sandwich," Caleb explained. "Bread, meat, vegetables, sauce, human food. Nothing fancy, but way better than those nutrition bars. Try it." Lyra stared at the sandwich. No one had ever given her food before. No one had ever shared anything with her. "Why?" she asked, the word slipping out before she could stop it. Caleb tilted his head. "Why what? Why are you being kind to me?" He looked at her for a long moment, his brown eyes soft and warm. "Because you seem like you could use a friend. And honestly, you're the most interesting person I've met on this station. Everyone else just wants to sell me things or complain about humans. You actually listen when I talk." "I am not interesting," Lyra said. "I am marked, I am cursed. The other do not even speak to me." "The other are idiots," Caleb said simply. "Now eat the sandwich before it gets cold." She ate the sandwich. It was the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. After that, Caleb joined her for every meal break. He brought different foods each time, things called chocolate and cookies, and something warm and sweet called hot cocoa. He told her stories about his home planet, a world called Earth that was covered in oceans and forests. He talked about his family, his friends, his dreams of exploring the galaxy. And he asked her about herself. No one had ever asked about her before. At first, she did not know what to say. Her life was empty and sad, full of loneliness and pain. But Caleb listened to everything she told him, and he never once looked at her with pity. "Your people threw you away because of a scar," he said on the fourth day, his voice filled with disbelief. "That's insane. On Earth, scars are considered cool. They mean you survived something tough. They mean you're strong." Lyra touched her face without thinking. "Among the physical perfection is sacred. A scar means I am broken, unworthy, impure." "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard," Caleb said. "You know what I see when I look at your scar? I see someone who went through something painful and came out the other side. I see a survivor. And honestly, I think it looks kind of cool." She stared at him. "You think my scar looks cool?" "Yeah, it gives your face character, makes you look tough and mysterious." He grinned at her, "like a warrior princess from one of those old Earth stories." Lyra did not know what to say. Something was happening inside her chest, something warm and bright that she had never felt before. It scared her and thrilled her at the same time. On the fifth evening, Caleb invited her to the observation deck. "Come on," he said after their shift ended. "The view is amazing at this time of cycle, all the ships coming and going, the stars in the background. You'll love it." "I am not supposed to be on the upper levels," Lyra said. "Who says?" "My supervisor, the station rules. Workers like me are not allowed." Caleb frowned. "That's ridiculous. The observation deck is for everyone. Come with me. If anyone gives you trouble, I'll handle it." She should have said no. She should have gone back to her tiny room and stayed invisible like she always did. but something in his voice made her want to believe him. Something in his eyes made her want to trust him. She went with him. The observation deck was beautiful. The windows stretched from floor to ceiling, showing an endless field of stars. Ships of all sizes moved through the darkness, their lights twinkling like fireflies. In the distance, a nebula glowed in shades of purple and gold. Lyra stood at the window, her breath caught in her throat. She had sneaked up here many times before, but always alone, always in the dark, always afraid of being caught. Now she stood in the light, next to someone who wanted her there. "Worth it, right?" Caleb said, standing beside her. She nodded, unable to speak. They stood there for a long time, watching the stars together. At some point, Caleb's hand found hers and held it gently. She did not pull away. "Lyra," he said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Your scar, does it hurt?" She thought about the question. No, not anymore. It stopped hurting a long time ago. "Then why does everyone treat you like it does?" She turned to look at him. His face was serious now, his brown eyes filled with something she did not recognize. It was not pity, it was not curiosity, it was something deeper, something that made her heart ache. "I do not know," she whispered. "It is just the way things are." "Maybe it's time for things to change," he said. And then he smiled at her, and she felt the last of her walls begin to crack. For the first time in her life, Lyra was not alone. And for the first time in her life, she was starting to hope that maybe, just maybe, she was not broken after all. The rumors began on the 6th day. Lyra had known they would come eventually. Nothing stayed secret on a station like Theta 7. Workers talked, they whispered, they watched, and what they saw was impossible to ignore. The marked one was spending time with a human. At first, the other simply stared. They watched from a distance as Caleb sat with Lyra during meal breaks, as he walked with her through the cargo bay, as he laughed at something she said. Their faces showed confusion, then disgust, then something darker. Her supervisor was the first to confront her. He found her alone in the lower storage section, stacking crates for the night shift. The lights were dim there, and the air was cold. It was the kind of place where no one would hear if she screamed. "You shame yourself," said his voice like ice. Lyra froze. She did not turn around. "The entire station is talking about you," he continued, stepping closer. "The marked one consorting with an alien, eating with him, walking with him, holding his hand on the observation deck." Lyra's stomach turned. Someone had seen them. "He is just a friend," she said quietly. "You have no friends," spat. "You are cursed, broken, impure. You do not deserve friends, and you certainly do not deserve the attention of anyone, not even a disgusting human." Lyra said nothing. She had learned long ago that arguing with only made things worse. "You think he cares about you," laughed a cruel and empty sound. "You think he sees you as worthy. He is merely curious. You are a novelty to him, a strange alien creature with an ugly face. He is amusing himself with you. When his ship is repaired, he will leave and he will forget you ever existed, and you will have nothing but deeper disgrace." The words cut into her like knives. She wanted to argue, to fight back, to tell him he was wrong. But a small voice inside her whispered that maybe he was right. Why would Caleb care about her? They had known each other for less than a week. He was a human from a distant world with friends and family and a life she could not imagine. She was nobody. She had nothing. "Stay away from the human," said. "Do not speak to him. Do not look at him. If I see you with him again, I will have you transferred to the waste processing section. You will spend the rest of your life cleaning sewage pipes. Do you understand?" "Yes," Lyra whispered. "Good," turned and walked away, leaving her alone in the darkness. That night, Lyra did not go to the observation deck. She did not meet Caleb for the evening meal. She went straight to her room and locked the door and sat on her bed, staring at the wall. Was right, she had been fooling herself. Caleb was kind, yes, but kindness was not the same as love. He was friendly, but friendly was not the same as forever. He would leave in 2 days. His ship would be repaired and he would fly away to the stars and she would never see him again. And she would be alone, just like always. She did not cry, she had forgotten how. The next morning she avoided Caleb completely. When she saw him in the cargo bay, she turned and walked the other way. When he called her name, she pretended not to hear. She kept her hood low and her head down, and she worked in silence, the way she had done for years before he arrived. Caleb tried to reach her. He followed her between sections, calling after her. He waited near her workstation, trying to catch her attention, but she would not stop. She would not look at him. Finally, during the evening shift, he cornered her in the back section of the cargo bay. She had nowhere to run. "Lyra, stop," he said, his voice filled with concern. "What's going on? Did I do something wrong?" "No," she said, still not looking at him. "You did nothing wrong, but you need to leave me alone." "Why, we were getting along so well. I thought we were friends." "We are not friends," she said, the words burning in her throat. "We cannot be friends. You are human. I am. You will leave tomorrow and I will stay here and everything will go back to the way it was." Caleb was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft. "Someone said something to you, didn't they? Someone told you to stay away from me." Lyra did not answer. "Was it that supervisor?" Caleb's voice hardened. "I've seen the way he looks at you, like you're garbage, like you don't matter. He said something, didn't he?" "It does not matter what he said," Lyra whispered. "He was right. You will leave, everyone leaves, and I will have nothing." "Lyra, look at me." She could not. If she looked at him, she would break. "Lyra, please." Slowly, painfully, she raised her head and met his eyes. They were warm and brown and filled with something she did not deserve, something she had never been given. "Whatever they told you," Caleb said, "it's not true. I'm not here because you're a novelty. I'm not here because I'm curious about aliens. I'm here because I like you. I like talking to you. I like being with you. And when I look at your face, I don't see a scar. I see someone who has been hurt and abandoned and treated like nothing for her entire life. And all I want to do is show you that you're not nothing. You're everything." Tears burned in Lyra's eyes. She had not cried in years, but now she could not stop them. "You will leave," she said, her voice breaking. "Everyone leaves." Caleb reached out and gently touched her cheek. His hand was warm against her skin. She flinched, but she did not pull away. "Then come with me," he said. She stared at him, not understanding. "Come with me, Lyra. Leave this station. Leave these people who treat you like garbage. My captain is a good man. There's always room for someone who's willing to work hard. I can talk to him. I can make it happen. You don't have to stay here anymore." "You want me to come with you," she whispered, "to leave everything." "What are you leaving behind?" Caleb asked gently. "This place isn't your home. These people aren't your family. You deserve better than this, Lyra. You deserve a chance to be happy." Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand on her face, feeling the tears run down her cheeks. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him, but she was so afraid. "I need time," she said, "to think." "Okay," Caleb said. "I'll wait, but we leave tomorrow afternoon. If you want to come with me, meet me at the boarding ramp at the 15th hour. I'll be waiting." He lowered his hand and stepped back. Then he gave her a small smile and walked away. Lyra stood alone in the darkness, her heart torn in two. She had one night to make the most important decision of her life. Lyra did not sleep that night. She lay on her bed in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with thoughts she could not control. Caleb's words echoed in her head, over and over, mixing with the cruel words had spoken. "Come with me, you deserve better. You are nothing, you are everything." The two voices battled inside her, tearing her apart. One voice was loud and harsh, the voice of 23 years of pain and rejection. The other voice was soft and warm, the voice of 6 days of kindness and hope. She did not know which one to believe. As the hours passed, Lyra found herself thinking about her life. She thought about her parents, who had given her away before they even learned her name. She thought about the workers who had raised her, who had never once shown her love. She thought about all the years she had spent hiding in shadows, keeping her head down, accepting cruelty as if it were normal. She thought about the station, this cold metal box floating in empty space. She had lived here for 3 cycles. She had worked here, eaten here, slept here, but she had never felt at home. She had never felt like she belonged. And then she thought about Caleb. She thought about his smile, the way it reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. She thought about his laugh, loud and genuine and free. She thought about the way he looked at her face, at her scar, without flinching or turning away. She thought about the warmth of his hand on her cheek. He had called her everything. No one had ever called her anything. When the morning cycle began, Lyra got up and looked at herself in the small mirror above her sink. She stared at her reflection for a long time. She saw her blue skin, pale and tired. She saw her silver eyes, dull with exhaustion. And she saw her scar, the jagged line that had defined her entire existence. For the first time, she tried to see what Caleb saw. A survivor, a warrior, someone who had been through something painful and come out the other side. Could it be true? Could her scar be something other than a curse? Could she be something other than broken? She did not know, but she wanted to find out. Lyra went to the cargo bay for the morning shift. She worked in silence, stacking crates and loading platforms just like always, but her mind was somewhere else. Her heart was somewhere else. At the 12th hour, she saw the humans packing up their equipment. They were preparing to leave. Their ship was repaired, their work was done, and they were heading back to the stars. Caleb was among them, directing the others as they loaded the last of their cargo. He looked up and saw her watching from across the bay. He did not wave. He did not call out to her. He simply nodded once, a small gesture that said everything. The choice was hers. At the 14th hour, Lyra finished her shift and walked back to her room. She stood in the doorway and looked at the tiny space that had been her home for 3 cycles. The narrow bed, the gray walls, the single window that showed nothing but metal and darkness. There was nothing here for her. There never had been. She packed her few belongings into a small bag, some clothes, a nutrition bar, a broken piece of equipment that she had always thought was beautiful, even though no one else did. It all fit easily, her entire life reduced to a bag she could carry in one hand. Then she walked out of the room and did not look back. The corridor to the docking bay was long and crowded. Aliens of all species moved in every direction, talking and arguing and rushing to their destinations. Lyra moved through them like a ghost, invisible and unnoticed, just like always. But for the first time, she did not mind being invisible. She was not hiding anymore. She was escaping. When she reached the docking bay, she saw the wandering star waiting at the far platform. It was a modest ship, smaller than most, with patches of repair work visible on its hull. But to Lyra, it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Caleb was standing at the boarding ramp, his hands in his pockets, his eyes scanning the crowd. When he saw her walking toward him, his face broke into a wide smile. "You came," he said. "I came," she answered. "You sure about this? Once we leave, there's no coming back." Lyra looked over her shoulder at the station behind her. Somewhere in those metal corridors was probably looking for her. Somewhere in those cargo bays, the other were probably whispering about the marked one who had disgraced herself with a human. Let them whisper, let them talk, she did not care anymore. "I am sure," she said. "There is nothing for me here, there never was." Caleb held out his hand. "Then welcome to the wandering star. We're not fancy, but we take care of our own." Lyra took his hand and let him lead her up the boarding ramp. The inside of the ship was warm and cluttered, filled with equipment and personal belongings. The human crew members looked up as she entered. Some of them seemed surprised to see an alien on board, but Caleb introduced her confidently, telling them she was a new member of the team. "She's a hard worker," he said, "and she's got more heart than anyone I've ever met. Treat her right." The crew nodded and went back to their preparations. No one stared at her scar. No one turned away in disgust. They simply accepted her as if she were any other person. Lyra felt something crack inside her chest. Not pain, something else. Something that had been locked away for so long she had forgotten it existed. Relief, joy, freedom. An hour later, the wandering star lifted off from Station Theta 7 and turned toward the stars. Lyra stood at the observation window, watching the station grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. Caleb came to stand beside her. "How do you feel?" he asked. Lyra thought about the question. She thought about everything she was leaving behind and everything that lay ahead. She thought about the fear and the hope and the strange, wonderful feeling of being wanted. "I do not know," she said honestly. "I have never felt like this before." "Good or bad?" She looked at him, at his kind eyes and warm smile, at the face of the man who had seen her scars and called her beautiful. "Good," she said, "very good." Caleb reached out and took her hand. She let him. They stood together at the window, watching the stars stretch into long lines of light as the ship jumped into faster-than-light travel. The universe opened up before them, endless and full of possibilities. Lyra did not know what the future held. She did not know if she would ever find a true home or if she would ever stop feeling the weight of her past. But she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer the marked one. She was no longer cursed or broken or invisible. She was Lyra, she was a survivor, and for the first time in her life she was exactly where she belonged. Not because of what she looked like, but because of who she was. And that was a gift only a human could have given her.